In a small town in Oka, there lived a man called Chief Caru. He was a man whose pockets never went dry and whose laughter echoed across every compound. With all his wealth and his fine clothes, Chief Caru had one weakness: women. He believed a man's greatness was measured by how many women knelt down before him in the morning and how many warmed his bed at night. By the time he turned 50, he already had 3 wives and more children than he could count. They were all living in one compound that never knew peace. His first wife, Ngozi, was proud with sharp tongue. She saw herself as the queen of the house, and every word she spoke carried authority. The second wife, Uloma, was quiet but full of envy, a woman who smiled with her lips but rolled her eyes the moment you turned your back. And then came the youngest, Obidia, the last wife, the one everyone mocked. From the day Obidia entered the compound, peace packed its load and left the compound. Ngozi and Uloma joined forces against her. If she cooked, they poured the food away. If she washed her husband's clothes, they poured palm oil into the rinsing water. If she smiled, they said she was pretending. And if she cried, they said she was seeking for attention. Chief Caru didn't care. To him, the quarrel of women were like rain on a zinc roof. It was noisy but harmless. He would simply wave his hand and say, "Let them be. When women fight, it means the house is still standing." Little did he know, his last wife, Obidia, was going through a lot in the hands of the other wives. When she gave birth to a baby girl, the whole compound laughed at her. Ngozi said loudly, "She couldn't give my husband a son. Now wow, you better pray she looks like her father. Maybe then he will remember you still exist." Even the house help joined them in laughing at Obidia. That night, Obidia wept until her chest ached. As she held her baby close, she whispered, "My daughter, you shall be called Ego, because in this world, money gives you voice. Let your name be a reminder that with money, even your enemies will bow before you." Ego grew up in that bitter atmosphere. Her half-brothers would hide her slippers before school. Her stepsisters would pour water on her uniform, and then they would lie that she did it herself. They mocked her and called her mother all sorts of names, even though she lived under the same roof with the rest of the other children and wives. Their father didn't pay attention to them because her mother didn't bear him a son. Sometimes, when she went to the kitchen, the maid would whisper, "Here comes the cursed child. You couldn't allow your mother birth a son for your father." And when she came back to her mother's quarters crying, her mother would clean her tears and say, "Don't cry, my child. One day you will grow, and the same people laughing at you will beg to see you." Those words sank deep into Ego's young heart. At night, while her mother slept, she would stare at the ceiling, thinking about her life. Why was her mother always treated like a stranger in her own husband's house? Why did her father never defend them? One evening, Ego sat beside her mother and then she asked, "Mama, why did you marry Papa when you knew he had other wives?" Obidia sighed deeply. Her face looked tired. "My daughter," she said, "I didn't marry your father because I wanted to. My father married me off to him. He said if I married him, he will clear all my father's debt. They didn't know that your father would neglect me." Ego was quiet for a while. Then she said, "So Mama, if Papa didn't love you, why didn't you leave?" Obidia smiled sadly. "Leave to where? When a poor woman leaves her rich husband, what people call her foolish and they mock her." Those words never left Ego's mind. From that day, something hardened in her. She stopped crying when people mocked her. She started watching and learning. She learned that the world respected money, not tears. One night, while she sat on her mattress, she whispered to herself, "If men can use money to marry many wives, I too will use money to marry many husbands. I will make lots of money, and no man will ever make me cry the way my mother cried." From that day onward, something began to grow inside her. It was a fire of ambition, pride, and revenge. Years passed, and Ego grew into a fine young woman. Her beauty was the kind that turned heads in the market and made men forget their way home. She had her mother's bright eyes and her father's confidence. Behind that beauty was a burning hunger to prove the world wrong. After Chief Kalu's death, everything changed. His first wife, Ngozi, and her children took over the compound. They threw Ego and her mother out like chickens. It was a bright morning when it happened. The compound was filled with people mourning the great Chief Kalu. Behind that fake tears, plans were already moving. Since he's dead and gone, Ngozi, his first wife, said, everyone should go back to their father's house. We can't keep feeding strangers here. Obidia looked at her in disbelief. Strangers? I was his wife too. Ngozi hissed, you were his toy. Pack your things before I burn them. And just like that, Obidia and her daughter were sent away. They returned to her hometown empty-handed with only a few wrappers and a small bag of clothes. From that day, suffering became their closest companion. Obidia started selling cassava by the roadside. Ego would follow her to the market carrying a tray of pepper on her head and shouting, buy fresh pepper here, sweet pepper there. Sometimes they would walk home with only a handful of coins. Some days they didn't even eat. Even in that hardship, Ego's eyes shone with determination. Her mother often told her, Ego, life doesn't pity women like us, so you must learn to pity yourself. And truly, she did. Then one day, tragedy struck again. Obidia fell sick, a sickness that started with small cough but grew into something worse. The herbalist said it was her husband people that sent the sickness. Some said it was her co-wives. Either ways, the sickness refused to leave. Ego tried everything possible. She fetched herbs, prayed, cried, but nothing worked. On one sad evening, as rain poured heavily, Obidia called her daughter close and she whispered her last words, my daughter, please be wise and never beg love from any man. She closed her eyes and never opened them again. That night, Ego cried until her throat hurt. She buried her mother with the help of kind neighbors, and after the burial, she sat in front of the small house and thought about her life. The world had taken away everything that belonged to her, and now she was left alone. She promised herself, no matter what it took, she would do everything to escape poverty. I will make money. I will build a fine house bigger than the one my father owns. She promised herself. After Mama Ego's death, life became empty for Ego. She was just a young girl. Yet, she had already seen enough pain to last her for a lifetime. Days turned into weeks, and the neighbors who used to check in on her slowly stopped coming. People had their own problems. Once the morning was over, the world moved on, but Ego did not. To feed herself, she began helping women in the market. She would carry their baskets, wash vegetables, and sweep their shops just to get little food to eat. It was during one of those market days that her story began to change. There was a woman called Auntie Ogechi, a big trader who sold palm oil and groundnut oil. She was known for her sharp mouth and generous heart. She had watched Ego suffer for months and often gave her small change to buy food. One afternoon, as the sun burnt hot, Auntie Ogechi called her. Ego, she shouted, wiping sweat from her forehead. Yes, ma, Ego answered, running to her side. Sit down, my daughter. The woman said, I have been watching you. You are a respectful and well-behaved girl. Ego smiled faintly. Thank you, ma. The woman looked at her again. Tell me, are you ready to marry? Ego froze. Marry? Yes, marry, she repeated. My elder brother in the next village has been looking for a good girl to marry. His first wife died 2 years ago. He's a quiet man. He can take care of you. Ego looked down. Her heart was beating fast. She was still young, and the thought of marriage scared her. She also knew staying in that village meant more suffering. Ma, I don't know, she said. Auntie Ogechi smiled. Think about it. His name is Chief Obinze. He is a palm wine tapper and a farmer. He has his own land and his compound is peaceful. I will not push you, but if you agree, I will take you there myself. Ego thought about her life. She had no father, no mother, no brother, no one. She remembered how hunger used to keep her awake at night, and how her mother once said, "A woman must find a branch to hold, or else the wind will carry her away." That evening, she sat alone by her mother's grave, and then she whispered, "Mama, I am tired. Maybe this is my life. This is how I am meant to live." By morning, she had made up her mind. A week later, Auntie Ogechi took her to the next village. It was a long journey. Ego didn't complain. Her heart was full of fear and hope. When they arrived at Chief Obinze's compound, Ego saw a man sitting on a wooden chair under a mango tree. He was tall, dark, and had a long scar across his cheek. He looked much older than she expected, maybe in his late 60s. Auntie Ogechi called out, "Brother Obinze, I have brought the girl I told you about." The man smiled slowly, his eyes resting on Ego. "So, this is the girl?" he asked. "Yes," his sister replied proudly. "She is hardworking and humble. I know her late mother." Chief Obinze nodded. She looks decent. What is your name, my dear?" "Ego, sir," she said. He smiled. "Ego, that's a good name." Then he made a dry joke. "Every man needs an ego in his house." Everyone laughed. That was how it all began. Within few days, the elders from both families met. There was no long ceremony. Just a few bottles of palm wine, a hen, and some yams were exchanged. Ego became Chief Obinze's wife. She was a young girl, married into an older man's house. At first, everything seemed fine. Chief Obinze was calm, a man who didn't talk much, but provided what he could. His compound was peaceful, but soon, Ego realized she had not entered comfort. Rather, she had entered another kind of suffering. The man's first wife had left behind 2 grown daughters who hated Ego. They called her names. They said she was too small, too proud, and too arrogant to be married to their father. They made her do all the house chores, from cooking, washing, sweeping, while they sat under the mango tree, gossiping. Chief Obinze did not say much. He believed peace came from silence. When Ego complained, he would simply say, "Ego, they will get used to you. Don't fight them." But they never did. One morning, one of Chief Obinze's daughters, Cha-Cha, poured pepper into Ego's bath water. Ego screamed. Her body burnt badly. When Chief Obinze asked them what happened, they denied everything, and he believed them. From that day, Ego stopped complaining. She became quiet and observant. She started helping Chief Obinze with his palm wine business. She would follow him to the farm, climb trees, and carried a big calabash of palm wine on her head. Men in the village admired her strength. Women respected her boldness. Deep down, she felt trapped. She was too young to be in a home where nobody cared about her feelings. Then one day, she met a visitor. He was a rich trader who came to buy palm wine from her husband. He noticed Ego immediately, and she also noticed him too. The morning sun had just climbed above the palm trees, and the air smelled of processed fufu. Ego was in the compound, rinsing calabash and preparing to follow her husband to the farm. "Ego!" Chief Obinze called from the front yard. "We have a visitor. Please come out." She wiped her hands and ran out. Standing beside her husband was a man dressed in fine white lace. His name was Mr. Okafor, a rich palm wine buyer from the city. He had come with his driver and a big black jeep that drew the attention of everyone in the neighborhood. Children gathered to look at it. They whispered in shock. Mr. Okafor smiled as Ego approached them. "This must be your wife," he said to Chief Obinze. His eyes never left her face. "Yes," Chief Obinze replied proudly. "This is my wife, Ego. She helps me with the business." "You are indeed blessed, Chief. Your wife is hardworking and beautiful at the same time. We don't see this kind of women every day." Ego bent slightly. "Good morning, sir," she greeted. "Good morning, my dear," he said warmly. "You remind me of my late sister, very strong and polite." Chief Obinze laughed, proud of the compliment. "Ego, go and bring palm wine for our guest." She hurried inside, but her mind was unsettled. There was something about the way the man looked at her, as if he saw something in her that even she didn't see in herself. Mr. Okafor stayed for 3 days in the village, and each day he visited Chief Obinze's compound. He would sit under the mango tree, drink fresh palm wine, and talked about the city life. He spoke of big houses, shining cars, and people who wore gold like ordinary beads. Ego listened quietly from the side. Sometimes he would ask her, "Have you ever been to the city, Ego?" She would shake her head. "No, sir. You should visit sometime. You have the kind of face the city respects," he would say. Each time he spoke like that, something stirred inside her. It was a hunger she had never felt before. When Mr. Okafor finally left, the compound felt dull. Before going, he gave Chief Obinze a big envelope filled with money for palm wine. As he shook hands with Ego, he slipped a smaller envelope into her palm, and then he whispered, "For your hard work, please buy something nice for yourself." Ego's heart almost stopped. This was something her husband had never done. When she got inside and opened the envelope, she saw 5 clean 1,000 naira notes. It was the first time she held that much money in her hand. That night, she couldn't sleep. She thought about the man, his fine clothes, his smooth words, his perfume that smelled like old money. She thought about her husband. He was old, tired, and uninterested in anything new. Weeks passed. Mr. Okafor returned again to buy more palm wine. But this time, he didn't talk much about business. He came in the evening when the air was cool. Chief Obinze wasn't around. He had gone to the next village for a meeting. Ego was in the kitchen when she heard the sound of a car horn outside. She came out, surprised to see the same jeep parked near the gate. "Good evening, sir," she said shyly. "Good evening, beautiful Ego," he replied. "I was passing and decided to greet you. Is Chief around?" "No, sir. He went for a meeting." "Okay then, I will wait a little. Or should I go and come back later?" Ego hesitated. "You can wait, sir." They sat outside, and the silence between them was heavy. After a while, he said, "Ego, you are too young to be wasting your life in this village." She looked away. "But this is my husband's house." "I know," he said. "A woman like you deserves more than pounding yam and washing calabash." Ego didn't reply. That night, she dreamt of the city, the loud laughter, and the big houses. Mr. Okafor began visiting often. Sometimes, he brought gifts. He told Chief Obinze it was appreciation for good business. But the way he looked at Ego told a different story. Whispers began spreading around the village. Women would point at Ego and say, "That girl is too friendly with the city man." Men would joke, "I don't trust that city man. Cha 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 cha." Chief Obinze should watch his young wife for. Otherwise, had I know, would be the last comment of a foolish man. Ego heard the gossip, but she didn't care. One evening, Mr. Okafor came again. This time, in secret. "I am leaving for the city tomorrow," he told Ego. "I want you to come with me." Ego froze. "Just like that?" "Yes," he said firmly. "If you come with me, I will make you my wife, and I will take care of you. You will never have to suffer again." Ego thought about her life. Maybe this was her chance to start a better life and run far away from her husband's children. And by morning, she made her choice. When Chief Obinze woke up, she had already run away. That was how Ego's new life began. She became Mr. Okafor's wife in the city. When Ego followed Mr. Okafor to the city, her heart beat like a talking drum. She had never seen such a place in her life before. The lights were bright like the stars in the sky. In the village, nightlife used to be quiet. But here in the city, night came dressed like a masquerade. It was loud, wild, and full of life. Mr. Okafor took her hand gently as they entered a big compound with tall walls and iron gates. When they got inside the house, Ego touched everything as if it was about to vanish. "This is your new home," Mr. Okafor said proudly. "Here, you will live like a queen that you are." She smiled shyly and then she said, "Thank you, sir." He laughed out loud and said, "Don't call me sir. My dear, call me your husband." That night, Ego slept on a big mattress The next day, she looked around the big bedroom, the shiny floor, the mirror that reflected her every move, and she said in her heart, "Mama, your daughter has finally left poverty behind." The early days were sweet like fresh wine. Mr. Okafor bought her fine clothes and expensive earrings that sparkled in the dark. When visitors came, they whispered to one another, "Is that the new wife? She's fine, oh." Ego had it all, and her pride grew wings. She started walking like someone who had never known hunger. But soon, things began to change. Mr. Okafor loved Ego, no doubt, but he loved control more. He didn't allow her to visit anyone. "You don't need friends," he would say. "Everything you want is in this house." At first, she obeyed him, but soon she began to feel like a bird locked in a cage. She wanted to laugh, to dance, to see the world from outside the mansion. But each time she asked her new husband, his face turned cold. "A good wife stays at home," he would always say. "The world outside is full of temptation. You don't need anyone but me." One afternoon, while he was out doing his business, Ego could no longer hold herself. She wore one of her finest clothes, painted her lips, and then she sneaked out. When she got outside the gate, she was confused. She didn't know her left from her right. She heard the sound of music at a nearby hotel. When she got there, it was an open garden. She saw young women dressed in lace and gold. They looked so rich. They were the wives of rich men in that neighborhood, and unlike her, they looked free. One of the women noticed her and then waved to her. "Hello, come and join us." Ego hesitated. She smiled and then she moved forward. "I am Stella," the woman said with a bold laugh. "And you?" "My name is Ego." "Ego," Stella repeated, smiling. "That's nice. I love that name. So, whose wife are you?" "I am Okafor Mba's wife," Ego said shyly. Stella's eyes widened. "You mean the man who sells the sweetest and most expensive palm wine in this town?" Ego nodded. "You're even finer in real life," Stella teased her. The other women also welcomed her. They offered her drinks, told her city stories, and laughed about their own husbands. One of the women said, "My dear, if my husband misbehaves, I will move on to the nearest man available. No time to check time. A woman's beauty is her weapon. If I were you ladies, I would use mine wisely." Those words entered Ego's head. That evening, when she returned home, she kept thinking about what Stella and the other women said. Why should I be caged when I have beauty? Days turned into weeks. Ego started changing. She no longer waited by the door for her husband when he returned from work. She dressed finer, styled her hair, and applied red lipstick. When her husband noticed, he frowned. "Who are you dressing for?" he asked. "For myself," Ego replied. That was the first time she spoke to him in such a manner. Weeks later, Stella invited her to a birthday party at a big hotel. Ego lied to her husband that she was going to the tailor's place. The party was loud. Men in suits and agbada filled the hall. That was where Ego met Senator Osuji. He was tall, dark, and spoke with authority. Even his laughter sounded expensive. When he saw Ego, he smiled slowly, and then he said, "You dance like a woman who owned the night." Ego blushed. "I just love good music." He chuckled and said, "I like you." He asked her if she was married, and she said something like that. Senator Osuji smiled. "A woman like you should be cherished." Those words wrapped around her like silk material. From that night, he began calling her. They met secretly. He took her out, bought her much more expensive things, and promised her all the good things in life. "Leave that man for me. I will change your life," Senator Osuji said one evening. "I will give you everything you have ever wanted." At first, Ego refused, but each time her husband shouted at her or locked the gate, she remembered Senator Osuji's soft voice. One night, after another quarrel, she packed her things quietly, took all the money she could find in his drawer, and left. When her husband, Okafor, returned from his trip, his house was empty. She had taken away every penny he had left and ran away. Ego moved into Senator Osuji's mansion and became his wife. She told herself this time she will be wiser. She began to demand for more material things. She asked him for a bigger house, more jewelry, and more cars. Senator Suji didn't complain at first, but soon he began to change too. He returned home late, shouted more, and smiled less when she noticed that his business was falling apart and his political position was at stake. She knew it was time to run away. He had traveled for a 1-week trip to Asaba. Ego packed her things and emptied his saving box. That was how Ego began her journey of marrying men and running away with their property. Each new husband was richer than the former. By the time she turned 39, she had married 5 men in different cities and left each one empty and confused. By the time Ego turned 40, she was no longer the same woman who once ran from one man's house to the other. Now, people called her Madame Ego. They didn't call her that because of her age. They called her that because of her money. She had made so much money from all the rich men she had married and left. She had lands, farms, shops, and even a factory where people worked day and night. Ego decided to move to a smaller city where her money could speak louder, where everyone would respect her and know that she had arrived. She bought a big piece of land and built a mansion. Only the price for the gates was enough to buy her father's mansion. When she moved in, she changed everything about her life. Her dresses were more expensive. Her hair was always styled, and she wore expensive jewelry from head to toe. Children ran after her car, shouting, "Madame Ego, Madame Ego." She was now respected, feared, and admired. Ego was not the kind of woman to stay on the low. One morning, as she sat in her living room, counting bundles of cash, she smiled and said to herself, "If my father could marry 3 wives, then I, Ego, will marry double of that and add an extra one on top. I will marry 7 husbands." That was how it started. Madame Ego began to travel from one city to another, from Enugu to Owerri, Aba, Nsukka, and even Asaba. In each place, she met one man. They were all young, handsome, and full of life. They didn't have her kind of money, but she didn't care. She said she needed fine men with fresh blood, men who would listen to her and do whatever she tells them to do. By the time she was done, she had 7 of them. People in the town thought it was a joke when they heard she was going to marry all 7 of them on the same day. They said it can't happen. No woman has ever done such a thing before. But Madame Ego was not a woman who spoke and failed to act on her words. On the wedding day, the whole town gathered. The road to her mansion was filled with cars. Drummers played, dancers shook their tiny waists, and everyone wanted to see this woman who dared to do what no one had ever done before. Madame Ego came out wearing a rich traditional attire, her head adorned with coral beads and her skin shining like oil. Behind her stood 7 young men. They were her husbands. They were all dressed in their various traditional attire. As she danced past them, she smiled proudly. The crowd went crazy. Some laughed in disbelief, some clapped, and some women shouted, "Madame Ego, you go. Keep pressing next." The celebration was massive, and the villagers didn't want it to end. Soon, the wedding was over, and everyone was waiting to see how Madame Ego and her 7 husbands will stay under one roof. Life inside Madame Ego's mansion was something the town had never seen before. Every morning, before the first cock crows, her 7 husbands were already awake, washing her cars, sweeping the compound, and getting ready for the day's work on the farm. Each of them wanted to please her more than the other. Chike, the most handsome, was always the first to greet her. "I greet you, my wife," he would say, bowing down slightly, hoping she would smile back at him. But immediately, Kene, the tallest of them all, would rush to open the door before Chike could. "My wife, let me carry your bag," he would shout. Sometimes their competition was funny. Other times it was pure madness. They quarreled over who would serve her food, who would sit closest to her at the dining table, and even who would fetch her bath water. It became so bad. One day, Madame Ego caught 2 of them arguing loudly in front of her workers. She didn't shout, she didn't curse, she just looked at them and laughed proudly. Later that evening, she called all 7 men into the sitting room and sat like a queen in her armchair. "My husbands," she began, her voice calm but firm, "I see everything that happens in this house. You fight to make me hate one and love the other. I am not blind. I am a woman who built her life from nothing. I know when a man is jealous. They all bow their heads in shame." She continued, "When my father had 3 wives, they fought every day until the house broke apart. This house will not be like that. I built this place with my hard-earned sweat, and I will not allow foolishness destroy my home. You are all my husbands, not my enemies. You must learn to accommodate one another and help each other. And make no mistake, I love you all equally." Her words sank deep into their ears. That night, no one spoke. From the next day, things began to change. The men started working together. They began to laugh again. They helped one another on the farm. If one was tired, another took over. If one was sick, the rest looked after him. Even the townspeople noticed the change. Madam Ego is truly wise. How did she make 7 men live in peace under one roof? Her home became an example to most men who married more than one wife. Men came from far and near just to see the woman who ruled 7 men without trouble. One afternoon, a group of elders visited her. They came with drums, kola nuts, and palm wine. Their leader, Chief Oeni, cleared his throat and said, "Madam Ego, you have done what most men can't do. You have brought respect to this community and shown that wisdom is not only found in one gender. For this, the Council of Chiefs have decided to honor you." That was how Madam Ego received her chieftaincy title among the other chiefs. From that day, she was no longer just Madam Ego, but a living legend in the community. Life became even sweeter for her. Every morning, her husbands greeted her in turns, her workers sang her praises, and her home couldn't stop receiving visitors. Madam Ego had peace, money, and respect. She remembered how she had dreamt of this life as a child, and finally, she heaved a deep sigh. She remembered her mother's tears. It was a thing of the past now. Now she was free. She was the one in charge. Although some people never stopped gossiping and whispering, but Madam Ego didn't care. And so, in that small town, be it good or bad, Madam Ego became a household name. And so, this is how the story of Madam Ego, the woman with 7 husbands, came to an end. Until next time, my name is Efwa, of Folktales by Efwa. Do remember to like, share with friends and family, and please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Thank you and bye!